I want to ask both of you what your like trajectory was when it comes to your kind of like Jewish identity, because I know, Lily, I mean, you're someone who you said you worked with AIPAC. So can you talk about the capacity in which you worked with them, and then how you got to where you are now, which I assume is no longer AIPAC compatible?
I'll clarify that I was never on AIPAC's payroll, but
Okay.
that doesn't really, I mean, I grew up going to Jewish day school, grew up in very like tight, close Jewish community in Orange County and San Diego. Very much like in the Jewish establishment, in a lot of ways. I didn't go to summer camp
Okay.
religiously. That's kind of the only thing I didn't do. But like, I went to day school for pretty much all of my education, give or take a few years. My family, we went to synagogue and kind of a few different kinds of synagogues. I did like, this is so nerdy, but like Jewish halachic debate team in high school. Um, I Yeah, I mean, and like being Jewish was the most important and is, in many ways like it for me, not just religion wise, but it is like my culture. It's the number one thing I identify as.
Hmm.
Um, and um, and so in the communities that I grew up in particular, my community in San Diego is actually a little more conservative than I would say most. Most like the American Jews voted 80% for Democrats this
Hmm.
cycle. And that's, aside from the modern Orthodox world, American Jews consistently vote for Democrats, and are pretty progressive, right, in a lot of ways, um, except on Israel. But
Right.
but my community was a
Progressive
little
except
more
on Palestine.
conservative. Yeah, PEP. My community was a little more conservative just in general, like more people who are Republican, a majority non-Ashkenazi and people who were either first or second generation immigrants from Israel or from Iran or from Mexico and South America,
Okay.
actually. So kind of like I mean, a different dynamic, and also people who were also like in some ways more don't necessarily identify as white, which is
Uh-huh.
interesting,
Right.
and more familiar with like anti-Semitism outside of the American context.
Right.
So all that to say, very, very pro-Israel communities. And even though like I was a Democrat, my family are Democrats, I was considered like a raging communist just for being a Democrat, capital D, by a lot of people in my world, and also like a raging leftist for just wanting like peace between the Israelis and Palestinians. Regardless of all that, being pro-Israel at like the base, whether we disagreed about some things, was like the unifying thing in my community. And people were very, very involved with APAC, and this was all before Trump. So I think the thing about APAC that's like been the way it's operated is like it felt very different in the Obama years, being in those spaces, than it started to when Trump got elected. And that's also one of the what started to like get me to
Oh, interesting.
reconsider all these people that I was in coalition with all of a sudden in a very obvious way. And I was like, I don't want to be here with you guys. But yeah, so I got involved as a student when I was in day school, and I started going to their policy
Day school
conferences,
is
which
Hebrew
were
school, is that right?
sorry, day school. No, I went to like Jewish
Yeshiva.
school for no, no, no.
I'm
Like
such a bad Jew, I really should know this.
no, it's
Okay.
okay. It's okay. It's okay. Um I guess it's pluralistic Jewish day school. Like it's like 6 through 12. Like I went to a school called the San Diego Jewish Academy,
Okay.
like
Do
a
we have
Jewish
that in New
school.
York? Is that like Ramaz here?
Oh, yeah, Ramaz.
Okay.
New York has like
Got it.
a million,
Got it. Okay,
Katie.
yeah.
There's like this is the Jewish homeland, actually,
Right.
New York
Yeah.
City. So yeah, it's
Okay.
regular school. That's
Got
just
it.
Jew. It's like a Catholic school, but for
Okay, got
Jews.
yeah.
Wow, I've never had to explain this.
Yeah. To another Jew, right? To a New York Jew, yeah.
I mean, and this is also like and this is interesting. My dad is actually not Jewish, but like my world growing up was so Jewish. Like this was so normal for me. This wasn't. And when I was outside of the Jewish world, I actually did face like Southern California is a really conservative place,
Mm,
like a decent amount of anti-Semitism from like Christians and people who are white supremacists. And so like really internalized like, okay, the Jewish world is safe for me and the Jewish non-Jewish world can be unsafe. And so
yeah.
that obviously contributes to like the falling into the propaganda around Zionism and
Right.
like the myth about that Israel is safe and good for Jews. But yeah, so I got involved with AIPAC as a high schooler. They have a lot of youth programs. They also were realizing that they were using young people and youth. So by the time I got to college, they had this like progressive student program that I was a part of. I went to Berkeley. It was very exciting for them that someone like me, a Democrat, Berkeley student would be like so involved. And I ended up running the like kind of APAC affiliated pro Israel club on campus until I graduated. Um, so I was never on their payroll, but they were my main
Sure.
extracurricular activity.
And so when did you have your aha moment where like maybe Israel doesn't make me safe, or maybe APAC isn't an organization I should be, you know,
Yeah.
supporting?
It was over, like, several years. It was kind of like a dual track thing was happening. I went to college, and so was just got a lot of exposure to things outside of my community and my world, and was also studying, like, politics and doing a lot of work in human rights spaces, both abroad and here, and kind of just, like I also, at one point, took Arabic and, like, had all this exposure to the Palestinian narrative on their own terms. And
Mm.
so started to read a lot and started to and again, I was always pro-Israel with I was very, like, J Streety, but there just was no J Street
So
in
you
where
went
I
from being
lived.
APAC-ish to J Streety? That was like the first step?
No, it was like I was involved in AIPAC, but I was like, "I'm here for a peace process, for, like,
Okay,
a
got
two-state
it.
solution." There just wasn't I didn't know anyone who did J Street growing up, like, that wasn't
Okay.
really an option for me. AIPAC was, like, the option. So so I was looking at it, from that angle, and then I think started to, like I was always open in some ways to anything that I felt would like contribute to peace, quote unquote. So, but was getting exposed to the Palestinian narrative and experience on their own terms. And then also, I was a sophomore in college when Trump was elected, so 2016. And, that was a really eye opening, like I said, I started to realize that I was like in coalition with the people that I was supposedly like, I was a fellow on the Hillary campaign, and and was seeing that these people, Trump included, were like detrimental to my community, to the communities I care about, to the issues I care about, like to this country, and realizing like, okay, what's happening here? The before Trump and under Obama, it felt like AIPAC was much more bipartisan, and
Mhm.
then that completely started to shift. And the Christian Zionism and the right wing, explicit right wing nationalism became much much clearer. And I was like, well, I can't be. I These people are not values aligned with me.
Right.
And I had thought that they were doing pro-Israel work because they cared about Jews and anti-Semitism. And then I was like, well, obviously you don't. So that it was like those two things happening at the same time. All this exposure I was having it was happening, plus like seeing what was going on, with the pro-Israel world in the States. Kind of, it was like a several year process of undoing and learning. And yeah, and just like I mean, it takes a long time to deprogram and to
Yeah.
learn something new.